Hello all. Let's have a look at data types in deep learning. So in the PyTorch. So let's go back to here. Let me see. Okay. So we have connected to the cloud here. So this is my Colab. If in case if you don't know how to use the Colab, please go through my previous videos where I explained everything about how to use GP, how to connect to GPUs, CPUs, etc. So let's import the module, import torch. So okay, this is connected. Okay, so we are going to learn about data types, right? So let's start with floats. So float 32 tensor. So basically is equal to. So again, we already know this one torch dot tensor how to create, right? 1.0. You can see that I'm directly giving 1.0, 2.0, 3.0 here, and I haven't given anything, so I'm mentioning data type is equal to none. So by default, PyTorch it always takes float 32 as the default, 32 bytes is the default for float. So let's print this one. So here is our tensor. Let's have a look at the data type of this one. So basically, it is float 32. So the same one you can write, can create a tensor in such a way that torch.tensor 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, and data type is equal to torch dot float 32. Right, we can also write like this and print float 32 sensor print dot d type. So now we can see it is a float 32 because we have mentioned here 32, but anyways, do remember that by default it's always a float 32. Okay, let's create, let's see what exactly the syntax, I mean what are all the parameters that we can pass over here. So float 32 tensor is equal to torch dot tensor, right? 1.2.0, 3.0, 4.0, and what else we can pass over here. So this is the values, and then I'm passing a data type is equal to, you can pass none if in case if you are looking for a float 32 bytes, or like you can pass a torch dot float 32, right? So device, which device this should be. So by default I'm going to go with the default one, which is the none means, I mean, and then so requires grad is equal to false. I'm keeping this as a false, but this is something that I will cover in the future, my future video. So basically, whenever we are calculating, whenever we are training the model, so we always turn this required grad is equal to on, and whenever we are going with the backward propagation, we wanted this to be false, and whenever we are doing the forward propagation, this should be true. So now anyways, we're not training the model, it's just a variable, so I'm giving this as a false. So print this one. You can see it's a 2 comma 3 comma 4, and if in case if you wanna know the data type, here it is the data type. So I mean, how many data types are there? So we have int as well. Let's quickly have a look at int 32 tensor is equal to torch dot tensor. So here, see, I'm not giving any float values. 2 comma 3 um, comma data type is equal to torch dot int 32. So print int that. Sorry, let's print int 32. Int 32 tensor data types. Right, so you can see we have successfully created torch in 32 as well. So let's assume that you have a float tensor, right? Float 32 tensor, and which is this one. If in case if you want to convert this to int 32 tensor, and 32 tensor is equal to, if you want to convert this one, torch dot, so you can directly, give this float 32 tensor dot type torch dot int 32. This is as easy as that. So let's have a look at this one. Print in 32 tensor. So basically, what we took one of the existing tensor, which is where the data type is float, and we converted that into the torch. and our original data type of the float at 32 tensor, it remains as it is and it is not changed. You can see over here, right, the float one. Okay, now let's see how to multiply. Let's multiply the float 32 tensor and the float into in 32 tensor. So float 32 tensor, so multiplying with int 32 tensor, right? So here the values, let's see what is the data type of this one. So basically if you multiply anything int with the float, the output is always like the float. So here the output is the float. So there is one more tensor which is called long tensor. So this is nothing but int 64, whether you call int 64 or the normal one. So how we create int 64 tensor is equal to torch dot tensor 1 comma 2 2 comma 3 comma 4 data type is equal to torch dot int 64 print int 64 tensor. Okay, the same one we can write as long tensor. Both long and int tensors are same, is equal to torch dot tensor, so 2 comma 3 comma 4 data type is equal to torch dot long print long tensor. And if you print the data type of this long tensor, it is long. So long tensor dot data type, you can see it is int 64, both are same, right? And so now let's see. So I mean, there are three most important points to remember, right? The first one is that we always have come across, so whenever we are dealing with the tensors like the variables, so if the tensors are not having the right data type, we may come across an error. So this is something that we often come across. So tensors not having right data type, right? So for example, you are calculating a mean, you are calculating average or mean, and if the tensor data type is int, then the system throws an error, right? Okay, now next what? So tensors not having right shape, why? So we haven't covered the matrices yet, but when we are working on the matrices, the shapes are very much important. So that's the one thing we have to remember, and all of this I'm going to cover in my future videos. Tensors not or on the right device. So for example, if we create a tensor and our and if it is if it I mean if we use the CPU and then we use the GPUs. So whenever you want to run the tensors on the GPU, so basically you have to convert the tensors from CPU to GPU. So whenever you are on the GPU, it works very fast. So these are the most important 3 points that you always have to remember whenever you are working on a project. Okay. So now let's take. So this is what I do prefer every time. So let's take a random tensor. Okay. Torch dot rand size is equal to. So I wanted 3 by 4, which is the 3 rows and 4 columns. Print random tensor. So this is what I prefer to do whenever I'm creating a variable. So let's print random tensor, right? So print f. So what is that? So let's look at the data type. So data type of tensor. What is this one? Random tensor. dot data type, right? And let's have a look at the shape of tensor. So dot shape, right? And also let's have a look at mm, the device. Tensor is on, so dot device. So whenever we create a variable, so if we have something like this next to the variable, so basically whenever we come across an error, we can quickly scroll up and we can see like, oh, what is the data type of this one exactly. Exactly, there it go. And you can see that my it is on CPU. The device tensor is on CPU, right? So please go through my rest of the videos as well, and I wish you all the best for your learnings. Thank you.